Yo, yo, it's ODB from OLP. This is episode 401 of OLP, your mini trucking headquarters. Thanks so much for coming back and continuing to rock with us every single episode. I really appreciate it. We want to give a huge shout out to Scraping the Coast, our title sponsor since the beginning, Scraping with an IN, thecoast.com. Every year in Biloxi, June, come on out, party with OLP and all of the great enthusiasts at Scraping the Coast. Listen, on this episode, we are now getting through November 2025, and I did skip an episode last week. Just, I was kind of still reeling from David Hardin's episode 400. Man, just what a great guest. And, I want to thank him again for coming on, taking the time. He sent me a lot of cool stuff to be able to share with all of you. So thank you. If you know David or you have him on Facebook, send him a message, let him know how much you appreciated listening to that episode. Many of you text me and said, hey, that was one of my favorites. I love the history. So thank you. On this episode, I'm going to try to not go into too much detail. It's not easy for me. I'm going to talk about our late friend, Phil Gordon. Phil passed away, and I want to kind of tip my cap to him. Luckily, I did always give him his flowers when I would see him. I would tell him how much I appreciated him and, let him know that it was always great to see him. So I want to talk about that primarily and give him just the respect that he's due. I also share something with Phil that many of you probably have never realized, and I'll talk about that on this episode for one. Again, I want to thank our title sponsor, Scraping the Coast. Now, I did reach out to Jason Weiss and Jameel via text the other day, and I wanted to do, and I may do this in the near future, an episode that encompasses some of his friends, club mates, people that he's been around a long time. And I just felt that it was a little bit too early to do that. I didn't want to start asking people, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? Because it's just, the news had just broke. I mean, we're not even a week from the fact that he had an untimely passing. So, we'll explore that opportunity in the near future. So let's jump into this episode where we give Phil Gordon his flowers. I also want to mention here I am on this episode. I'm kind of in the corner today. And the reason being is I need to get new lights. Some of my lights are kind of blowing out. And the reason for that is I've got this glare on the back of, or on the glass on my cases here. So it's kind of driving me crazy. I know some of you guys could kind of see that glare in the video if you're consuming via YouTube, but rest assured, I'm going to get all this hopefully over the next, I don't know, a couple of weeks, get some new lights. I've got some cool ones here that, they plug in on each side, and I have them daisy chained all through here. So I figured, hey, ODB's Corner, this is where I filmed a lot of videos over the course of time. So if you see me scrunched in the corner, it does feel like I've been hoarding a little too much and the stuff is growing like an 80s like horror movie. It's coming after me, but that's not the reason that I'm in the corner today. So I also want to say two things before we get started. I want to give a huge shout out to Hammered Weekend Wear. They've been with us a long time. HAMMERD, weekendwear.com. They have a new OBS shirt that was not part of the subscription. It was kind of like an extra that they did. The holidays are coming. If you want to show them some love, HAMMERD, weekendwear.com. Go out there and either order the OBS shirt. They have plenty of other cool stuff. Hats, stickers, skate decks, banners, you name it, Hammered Weekend Wear. I also want to give a huge shout out to Local Rides Mag. That's Local Rides with a Z, magazine. Hit these guys up. I've given them some shout outs and I want to do some more in social media. They've got some cool stuff. Bill and team are really good at what they do. And if you look at, the partnership that we've done with them, and you look at just the show coverage and the cover vehicles and the quality, it's no wonder that this is a great selling magazine. One of my favorite things is Mini Misconduct. Think of Mini Graffiti, and that Lance started, and it's really cool. Local Rides with the Z magazine. Give those guys a shout and let them know that OLP sent you. Okay. So news broke this week on probably late Monday, overnight Monday into Tuesday. On Tuesday, once a month, I have to go and do, I'm a part of a hearing downtown. And on those days, my routine's a little bit different than like a normal day for me, right? So I have to go like a totally different way to work. And I don't typically look at my phone before I even get to work, typically, believe it or not, in terms of any kind of social media. There are some rare occasions if I wake up before my alarm and I'm kind of sitting there going, hey, I got 20 minutes instead of the old days going back asleep and waking up in 20 minutes groggy. I'm just kind of up. So, yeah, there are sometimes I'll look at social media, but it's not a routine. So on Tuesday, I was going up an elevator. One of the elevators was down in the parking garage. So it was kind of this like little extra weight. Elevator would fill, wait for the, elevator to come back down. There's only two where I was at. And, just nervously, I was kind of just like, hey, I'm going to look at my phone real quick. So I pull up, I tap on Facebook app, and the first post that pops up is Jameel. I look at Jameel as someone that was very close to Phil. I know that they shared over the past year, the club. I think Phil got voted in out of control minis, or he became official at Eastbound Get Down 2025 back in January. So regardless of how long they have been friends, I know that they were tight. And Jameel was posting a lot about Phil's journey with, this illness that he had. So I saw Jameel's post where he basically said, hey, that, things appear to have taken a turn for the worse. And I was like immediately saddened by that. I forget exactly if in that post he said that he had passed away, but as soon as I saw that, I went to look for a different post. And basically by this time on Tuesday morning, people had confirmed that Phil Gordon had passed away. It was very tough for me because many of us know it, and when I say it was tough it was a tough pill to swallow, right? I know Phil has been fighting. I know his mom and his friends and people close to him have been in his corner. It was tough for me because it was a tough pill to swallow. Many of us have been reading Phil's updates. I think they were technically daily updates at this point. And when I text Jason Weiss and Jameel, Weiss got back to me and he just said, we knew that Phil, obviously had this health challenge, but we didn't expect for him to be gone this soon. And I don't think I could have said it any better than Weiss, the big homie. Shout out to him. Tip my cap to him. Last time Weiss and I saw each other was at Trucks and Cheeseburgers. And, when I say it's a tough pill to swallow, it's like it just hit me hard because I thought to myself that Phil didn't ask for this. Nobody asks for these kind of just tough life situations that they go through. And as we get older, we continue to be met with these, challenges of losing our friends, our family, things like that. And I don't know that I have all the words here on the podcast, but I just wanted to tip my cap and say that his resilience, he really he took it head on. And it kind of reminds me of Stuart Scott, at ESPN when, he was dealing with his illness, and some of the people over the course of time that have dealt and fought and really left a lasting impression on other people's minds to say, God forbid if I'm dealing with something similar or any kind of life challenge I have in the future, if I can handle it just a teeny ounce the way Phil Gordon did, I'll feel like I beat it to a certain extent. And I often tell people, give people their flowers while they're here. I really certainly mean that. I really do. I tell you guys all the time, not all of us get along. I say all of us, in the truck scene, in the world in general, right? Countries, people, family members, Hatfields and McCoy, Chevy versus Ford, red versus blue, Florida versus Florida State. There's rivalries in the world. That's okay. But I think if you can't try to bring any little positive thing out of a tough situation and kind of say, wow, last time I saw Phil, maybe you and Phil weren't seeing eye to eye on something, or, maybe it wasn't even Phil, maybe it was another buddy of yours or a family member. Just try to take something from this situation and go, what would Phil have wanted me to do? And when I saw Phil, I took a selfie with him at Eastbound Get Down. I was really happy to see Phil there. I know that Phil maybe, I can't remember if he always came to that event or not, but I was really happy to see him at that event, and he had his truck there. It was underneath the pavilion. And if I remember correctly, again, he was voted in the club. There was a big club presence. And it seems like it's been a few years, but when I looked back at that photo, like, Phil looked normal. And I want to say we knew that he was having some health challenges at that time. Somebody had indicated to me that he had moved back to Florida, maybe to deal with some things. And maybe I had talked with Phil at that point, but Phil looked like the normal Phil that I remembered, that we all remember. And that was back in January, Eastbound Get Down. Fast forward to November this week, we're talking 9 months, and Phil, had lost a lot of weight. He had shared his journey with us on social media. And he did look like a different person, but if you knew Phil, you knew Phil like it was still the Phil, right? He still was going to have his, I won't even call them dad jokes. Some of them were damn funny on Facebook, and I'm going to miss those about Phil. I'm going to miss too, when he was running hard in the scene, and I guess he always had access to these different VIP events. He was always sharing some risque stuff on at least on Instagram. I remember one time I had was talking to Phil, and he goes, "Look, I don't even think you're following me anymore." And I said, "Well, I had to unfollow you." He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I go, "Dude, I'm seeing all these photos, and I'm like kind of a little jelly here." You know what I mean? I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" And it was kind of like this funny exchange that we had. And if you know Phil and you know some of the good situations that he was in as a single dude, um, I think you could kind of smile about that because he shared some cool stuff. I was like, very nice, Phil. Hey, why don't you go do this a little bit more than the truck stuff? But in all seriousness, we we weren't the closest of friends, but every time we saw each other, scraping the coast 2013, I think I shared a photo the other day. Walking the strip, down there, we were watching people cruise by, and yo, Phil, let's get a photo. Boom, threw up the severed diamond, just showing a little bit of love. And every time I saw him, I appreciated him. Now, just like my dad had formed a relationship with Rob Scepter, rest in peace to Rob from Severed Ties, Florida. My dad had this relationship that he kind of formed with Phil to a certain extent. I don't know that they talked on the phone like Rob and my dad did, but he certainly, I think, was maybe communicating with Phil at one point through email. I know my dad formed a relationship with Joe Greaves, and they would chat here and there. And my dad was always intrigued by, if you don't know Phil very often or very well, you will know that Phil wore those, I'll call them like lenses on his eyes. And the first time my dad met him, he was like, yo, like my dad was like tripped out over it. Now, of course, my dad came from like the hippie era and some of those crazy times. And I don't know if my dad thought like, this is some like psychedelic type stuff going on or, whatever. But my dad was so intrigued. And I remember my dad loved taking photos, as Phil did. And I think Phil gave a lot of kudos to Joe Greaves. I remember talking to him about that. And Phil, I remember my dad going, "Hey, I want to take a photo." And Phil was like, holding his eye up like this. And my dad was like trying to snap a photo of his eye. Like my dad had like this keen sense of photography, even when I was a kid. He was the guy that would, have his 35 millimeter, and he would take a photo like of a hubcap that had a reflection that was cool in the background, stuff like that. He just had this cool eye for it, some of the depth of field stuff. And he was intrigued by Phil. He thought that it was super cool that Phil was doing what he loved. So my dad and I, they connected. And every time he saw Phil, I think he kind of felt like Phil was almost like a son to him. And if I remember correctly, now that I'm talking about this candidly, I forget what Phil's situation was with his dad, but I remember, Phil just like showing love to my pops, like he was like, "Yo, your dad's a cool dude, man," And not everybody says that kind of stuff. Even if your dad is cool, depending on where you are in life, like sometimes that was like, yeah, you don't share that, or by the time you get to your 40s, you're like, yo, your dad's cool, man, whatever. So, I always appreciated Phil for showing respect to my pops. I really appreciate that. Now, I'm going to share something with you that many of you probably never realized about Phil. And I'm saying this with all due respect because if you think about any photographer, even like the big homie Grant Cox, you think about Grant having his couple of covers that he shot for Mini Truckin magazine, and we think of like Wes Allison who shot the most, and you could easily look at someone and go, "Oh, you only shot a couple covers." That's cool. But you got to remember there's different eras, right? And Grant Cox, very much like Phil, they were probably coming up in that same era of getting their shot, and this blew my mind. I had planned to post, and I'm going to share some of these photos on November 18th of 2012. I'm getting goosebumps. Something happened, and Phil Gordon shot my truck, bada bing, for the cover of Mini Truckin magazine. And um afterwards, Phil, if you knew Phil was an opportunist, and he did a great job at, if you think about, many people don't realize magazine industry guys and ladies probably don't make a lot of money. It's not like the heyday. And who knows, even in the heyday, if they were really, breaking the bank, right? So Phil was really good about, he offered his own merchandise. I remember buying a shirt from him. I remember him doing calendars, and he would put like the different photos, because I mean, he took the photos of said vehicles, right? And then he even did this for me. And I don't know how many people he may have done this for, but what he basically did is he said, "Yo, Ballard, I can put together some really cool photo, all of the photos from the shoot, and I'll put them into this nice photo book, and I'll have it shipped directly to you." And he did. And this is, the photos from that day, November 18th, 2012. And of course, he took a photo of my son and I. My dad was there that day. Paul was there. And I'm forever grateful for that. Now, this is maybe what's going to possibly blow your mind. Now, remember, everybody there's different eras. And when 2012 rolled around and I debuted the truck in May, it was in this weird time when, and I think we're kind of in this still to a certain extent, like you build a high-end truck, and then you kind of feel like people are going to come knocking, like, "Hey, can we shoot your truck?" And Mike Alexander did offer to shoot it when I debuted it, but there was like, they always say don't turn down a photo shoot because you never know what's going to happen. And we were looking to leave, and my truck was looking to go back to Big Bodies to have a couple more things dialed in terms of the interior that he wanted to do. So Mike and I were just like, "Hey, we'll have to do it at a later point." And I really didn't get any other interest in shooting the truck. Well, I take that back. Kent did shoot it for Common Tread, so I want to thank Kent. That happened at the end of July, and Kent was gracious enough to go, "Hey," like he knew that they were more of like a homegrown magazine at that point. Like they were looking to expand. But Kent, I'm forever thankful that, he said, "Hey, I know you're trying to position it to maybe one of the national publications. So I'm fine with waiting a little while until we run it." So fast forward to, I think I had contacted John Mata, and we had talked a little bit, and around LNO, the Larry Neal Oliver Show 2012, that was in that November, Phil and I had linked up, and John asked for him to shoot the truck. And if I remember correctly, it wasn't, I'm pretty certain it wasn't the day of the show. I think it was the day after. So something happened. The show ran to a certain point, and it was like, "Well, look, tomorrow we'll shoot it like in Lakeland." And we ended up going a little bit further than where we originally anticipated shooting it. But I say all that because when Phil shot Bada Bing for the cover of Mini Truckin magazine right there, those photos were taken on November 18th, 2012. So 7 months after the debut of the truck, right? Which is totally cool. But what you may not know, that was Phil's only cover that he shot for Mini Truckin Magazine. And you might think, wow, that doesn't, like, I had to do a double take. I went into my database. I filtered by photographer. I'm like, okay, I did a double take. I did some control F. I looked at some of my pivot tables I have. I was like, photographers, control F, Phil Gordon. Yeah, he did shoot one cover for Mini Truckin Magazine, and that was my truck. And I'm forever grateful of that. Now, that's not to take anything away from Phil, because if you think back to 2012, I don't know when he officially started, but he was already chugging away. And when we got the truck positioned for some of the photos, he said, hey, John Mata asked me to shoot some vertical shots of it. He goes, do you know what that means? And I had, been around photography for a while. And I was like, okay, well, I know landscape, vertical, things like that. I was like, well, like up and down. Yeah, right. And he was like, yeah, I can't guarantee anything, but he wanted some vertical shots. And he goes, you know what that could mean? And up to that point, I mean, I was hopeful that my truck would land on the cover, but this is just no guarantee until what happens, right? You just go, whatever. So I'm very thankful for that. But I say all that because Phil, he was already chugging away doing his thing. I mean, he wouldn't have had that opportunity if he hadn't been doing show coverage and features and things like that. Now, I'm going back to my database and I'm adding more information, like adding every photographer for every feature in every issue, which is going to take some time. So it's hard for me to go in here and go, hey, his first feature was, 2009, in Mini Truckin or whatever. I can't do that at the moment. But I will tell you this, he was already chugging away. And I say that because if you think about that cover that came out July 2013, so let's just call it 2013 at this point, I would not be surprised if Phil had between 2013 and 2025, let's call it 12 years, maybe 13 years if you want to count, however you count it, 12, 13 years, he probably easily had 100 covers, features, and show coverage, credits, the byline, as I think Doug Culp would call it, by Phil Gordon. Now, it's probably way higher than that too. But I kind of say, in a 10-year run, what he was able to do was unbelievable. And I mean, it's almost of the likes of like Wes Allison. If you think about Wes Allison and everything that he did, Wes shot 57 covers for Mini Truckin Magazine, right? 57 for one publication. Now, Wes, I mean, he might have 500 to 1,000 if you count features and covers and show coverage. How many covers, I don't know exactly, but 57 for Mini Truckin. But if you think about what Phil did, Phil went on to be like a go-to photographer for Truckin Magazine. I mean, I have Truckin towards the end when they were a lot slimmer than like the 80s and 90s and 2000s. And every feature in there was his. It was mind-blowing. Okay. So I really think back to that time and I feel so gracious that Phil shot my truck, that it was on the cover of Mini Truckin Magazine. And although it wasn't his starting like jump off, that line in the sand, he was already chugging along, don't get me wrong, but it was like that 10, 12, 13-year run, unbelievable. And if you think about, someone said this to me the other day, it's like he didn't just shoot for Mini Truckin and Truckin. He did a ton of other stuff. He became a go-to name for street trucks, which is no easy feat. He also shot for like Dub Magazine. I think Solomon Lunger had posted some behind the scenes stuff where, if I remember correctly, Phil did several shoots with Rick Ross, the hip hop business mogul, right? Whether you like him or not, I mean, the guy makes a lot of money. He's got his name in a lot of stuff. Phil had shot stuff, I think, for Dub Magazine. I can't say for sure if that's how maybe Solomon got in on a couple times, but it seemed like Solomon did. He was maybe hired to shoot some behind the scenes stuff. I know the Mach 1 guys were in the past. They told me that. Regardless of however all that, panned out in the past, it was super cool to think of how much he did, not just in the truck scene, in the entire automotive industry. In a 10, 12, 13, maybe call it a 15-year span, is probably longer than that. Again, because his first cover, if Phil was here, he could tell us, my first cover was such and such. I highly doubt it was this one. I really do, because he was already doing amazing stuff. But I just say that's my connection to him. And like that day, my dad talked to Phil. I talked to Phil. Phil's girlfriend at the time was there. She was so nice. And it just was an easy experience. And so many people like Tim Davis and many of you have posted recent behind the scenes stuff. And if you think about, a photographer may not make the most amount of money in the truck world. Many of you don't know this. The way it works now is like these guys and ladies don't even get paid till the stuff runs. They might shoot something and the editor goes, we don't want to run it. Okay, well, I just spent an hour, 2 hours or longer shooting something and you don't want to run it. Or I shot it in November 2012 and it ran, the July 2013, which came out a couple months before that. And it's like, you don't get paid until then, right? I mean, it's a tough business, let's be honest. But Phil was really, really good at it. And if you think about how many dreams that he fulfilled in terms of shooting people's vehicles, unprecedented. You think about all the people that go, wow, man, Phil, like, I'll never forget you shot my truck on, on such and such show. I mean, you'd be hard pressed in the truck industry to be able to fulfill the dreams of somebody as much as he did. Yeah, you could be a shop, but you could only build so many vehicles, right? I mean, you think back to Master Image Customs. I mean, they probably built the most magazine and cover quality trucks out of any shop possibly, right? And even Doug Starbuck, what his shop, the lineage there, and when we had Doug on and how many vehicles they painted. So you kind of say all this and you just go, wow, like, other than being an editor or a photographer, it's really hard to like have touched that many people in terms of an experience, and to say, hey, I helped you, or I checked that box of cover or magazine feature or show coverage for that matter. I mean, tons of stuff, tech articles, you name it. And Phil, he did that for a lot of people. And I'm thankful for what he did for me. So I want to tip my cap to Phil Gordon. Rest in peace, my brother. Listen, in closing, I want to just remind you guys it's not easy to transition. Lone Star Throwdown every February in Conroe, Texas, the biggest and baddest. Phil loved the show. We hope to see you out there every February. Again, Conroe. Mini Nats, those registration emails are going out. Make sure you get that stuff paid. We'll see you in April, Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Garage Gear Clothing, I believe they're still offering free shipping at certain thresholds that you spend. So much respect to the kinfolk at Garage Gear Clothing. They have stuff for ladies, kids, all sorts of stuff. So keep them on your list for Christmas in terms of buying gifts for others, if that's what you do. A Local Rides Mag, I gave them a shout out. I also want to thank Phoenix Forged, Fenix Forged, great people. And we thank them for creating our awards for 2025 and beyond. Kennedy and team, they're great people. I also want to give you a shout out to the freaking weekend. I feel like this is at the very end, so I gotta reinforce to these guys that we appreciate what you guys do. Trip, we have a great time every September, and I think I know they've announced the dates for 2026. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's the 16th to the 18th, but it's right in that window. So look on the calendar. We hope that you come out. We're going to be there again. We always have a blast, pre-party, after party, all that stuff. It's awesome. But listen, episode 401, I wish that I didn't have to do a tribute episode like this. I'd rather the homies be here and the good people that make up our scene. But I highly encourage many of you, and many of you do this already. I mean, look, let me not pretend that you don't do any of this, but tell those people, like your friends, people that help you build stuff, people that maybe you horse trade work out with, the homies, the club mates, people that you may not see very often, especially, like I said, around the holiday season. Send them a text. Yo, don't need anything. Just want to say what up. Maybe there's family members, that you haven't seen in a while, give them a call. When I saw Phil in January, I didn't think that, hey, this is going to be the last time I see you. I mean, I said, hey, let's take a photo. And he's like, yeah, cool. Let's do it. he took a and I was looking back at some of his posts, and he made a post the other day. Well, I say the other day, I meant to bring this up earlier. He made a post back a while ago, and he posted my truck, and I'll try to flash this up on the screen. I took a screenshot of it, and I had commented, this was 11 weeks ago, August 31st. This is Phil Gordon. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was covering doing it in the dark in Lakeland, which it might have been that. I want to say it was L&O, but that's neither here nor there. You got to remember he was going through a lot at this point. Saw Jason Ballard's truck and practically begged him to shoot it. After looking around for locations in Lakeland and not finding anything great, this was the best I could find. Jason and his father arrived at the location, and I shot the beautiful thing. I had no idea this was going on the cover of Mini Truckin Magazine, and I'll always appreciate Jason for allowing me to shoot it. And again, going back, I kind of gave you a little bit of the backstory. I probably had maybe nudged Bada a little bit to go, hey, like I finished the truck. I'd love for it to run in the magazine. I don't remember specifically. Regardless, I gave you the backstory on how it worked out. And some of that, most of it I've never shared. So, in closing, the last thought I have is, I got this from hip hop. When they say give someone their flowers, that doesn't mean like at their funeral, right? It means like, give the people their props, however you want to say it. We'll hear this in hip hop a lot. Show them some love, right? Or thanks for the love. It's like, hey, thanks for posting that up. Tell people you appreciate them, and if your dream maybe hasn't been fulfilled yet, maybe you want to get your truck in a magazine. I tell people it's not easy now. I mean, there's about 5 publications. A couple of those are mainly online. One's overseas, things like that. But you just got to keep chugging away and, think about Phil. Phil didn't have any more time left here with us. He transitioned to the afterlife. And, I think about, what would Phil want me to do? Phil would want us to go out, have a good time. He loved shoes, if I remember correctly. And he loved seeing cool rides, whether they were slammed or lifted or Rick Ross type stuff. He'd want you to go out there and do the damn thing. So let's do it for Phil. To his out of control minis, they're on Instagram. To his family there, much love and respect to his mother and to everybody involved. Much respect. If there's anything that we can do, or there's any fund generation that comes together, I haven't seen anything yet. I didn't do a deep dive looking today, but if there's anything that we can do to share or to help, count us in. Much love, everyone. I know it's a little bit different of an episode from ODB, a little bit different energy this episode, but I can't thank Phil enough. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. Much love, homie. We miss you, man. ODB.